We have a lot of injury updates to get through, but I want to make these rankings as if Aaron Jones and Austin Ekeler will not be playing this weekend. Now, I'm going to live stream every single day for the rest of the year, so I'll continuously update you with these injuries, but I want to just rank Dylan and Joshua Kelly as if the starters weren't going to play, because we obviously know if Ekeler, if Aaron Jones are good to go, you go ahead and you put them in your starting lineup. But it's a little bit harder to figure out where we would play A.J. Dillon or where we would play Joshua Kelly if these guys were to miss. Obviously, tier 1, we have CMC, nothing to discuss. He's going to be in the tier by himself for a very long time. Leading off tier 2, do not hesitate, still play Saquon Barkley. Yes, the Giants were putrid. The Giants were horrendous. They lost 0-40 against the Dallas Cowboys. But right now, if you're looking at Las Vegas sportsbooks, they have an implied team total of about 23 points for the New York Giants against the Arizona Cardinals this weekend. And also, Underdog has about 100 yards for Saquon Barkley's total yardage pick'em, and that's one of the highest marks of any player this week. Now, Nick Chubb will be our next guy. Nick Chubb going up against Pittsburgh. I kind of would say, oh, it's a tough matchup. Pittsburgh Steelers defense is great. And then you go back and look at what CMC did this past weekend. Derrick Henry had 4 going up against the Chargers. Very interested to see the split that we have between Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears. I want to see if this game's a little bit closer and if the offense is effectively able to move the ball down the field, if we actually get more snaps for Henry than Spears in comparison to what we saw last week. Now at 5, we are going to go Tony Pollard. I think Pollard will be ahead of Henry in most weeks, but the issue is this week he's going up against the New York Jets. Very tough spot. Now with that being said, you actually have the underdog pick him for Tony Pollard at 92.5 total yards. So yeah, I mean, this is someone you're starting regardless of matchup. Then we will have Bijan Robinson in the last slot in this tier. As I've discussed previously with Bijan Robinson, he will move up these rankings as we progress through the season. But if we're going to be looking at what we have right now, probably not a situation in which we want to go ahead and rank him as the RB2 overall with the usage that we have from Algier. We'll get to Tyler Algier later on this video. But going over to our next tier, we will have Josh Jacobs at 7. Jacobs is a tier 2 running back, but they're going up against Buffalo. Their implied team total is only 19 points. They're supposed to get waxed this weekend, so really tough matchup for Jacobs. Now, similar to how we are going all in on the Saquon Barkley bounce back, we are going all in on the Joe Mixon bounce back here at 8. If you're looking at his underdog pick'em, he's at 78.5 total yards against the Baltimore Ravens. Vegas has the Cincinnati Bengals as a top 5 offense in the NFL this next week. They know more than we do. We're going to listen to their data, and I think you have to go in. You have to bet on the Bengals being a good team overall. Now, Etienne will be our next running back at 9. I want to reiterate, Travis Etienne is one of my favorite targets in fantasy football right now. We know the Jags have a phenomenal offense. Not only do they have a great offense, but Etienne week 1 showed us that, yes, he is going to expand his role as a pass catcher. He pretty much ran every single route in this backfield. He saw a considerable amount of targets. This combined with his usage at Clemson, combined with the statements he made coming into this season, I'm very excited about what we are going to get from Etienne. Now going over to Ramondre Stevenson at 10. With Ramondre, this is a running back that Ezekiel Elliott's going to be a little bit of a headache. I think Zeke still continues to see some looks inside the red zone, but ultimately Ramondre is still running pretty much every single route. You're obviously a lot more excited in a full PPR format, but his total underdog pick'em right now is actually at 79.5 total yards. And then we will go Kenneth Walker against the Detroit Lions at 11. Love Walker. I mean, he tied for the team lead in targets last week. The fundamental issue is they are 6-point dogs against the Detroit Lions. You assume Detroit wins this game pretty easily. And if that is the case, Seattle may have to look to throw the ball in the second half. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I'm going to rank A.J. Dillon here. Like I said, it is not the case that Aaron Jones has been ruled out yet. But Aaron Jones has missed 2 practices so far this week with the hamstring injury. It is trending in the direction where maybe this is a game time decision. I wanted to rank A.J. Dillon as if Aaron Jones were going to miss, because if Aaron Jones misses, I want everybody to have Dillon in their starting lineup. Now, of course, with that being said, if Aaron Jones ends up playing, please, for the love of God, do not start A.J. Dillon at this point. Now, Rachaad White will be our next running back at 13. We'll throw James Conner in here as well. Running backs that are in horrendous offenses. And one of my favorite pick'ems this weekend will be the fewer than 86.5 total yards for James Conner. Crazy that you have Conner there with how bad of an offense this is. I know the Giants didn't really look great. Maybe the Cardinals are able to effectively move the ball down the field. I think Connor's a pretty strong talent, but fundamentally, if you are in the Arizona Cardinals offense, to have a median projection at 86.5 total yards, I'm easily going to be taking the fewer than there. And of course, if you want to check out any of these pick'ems on Underdog Fantasy, you can find that link in the live chat in the description in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, you're going to get a 100% deposit match up to $100. Plus, you're going to get our updated top 150 rankings and tiers on flockfantasy.com. And if you're new to Underdog with promo code FLOCK, you're going to get a Joe Burrow special pick'em, more than less than half a passing yard this Sunday. Also, please include Tua in a special pick'em, because then you're going to be entered in to win $10,000, giving away $10,000 to 10 people every single weekend going forward. But now going over to our next RB, we will be looking at David Montgomery at 15. David Montgomery, the running back with the majority of the work in Detroit for now. Obviously, long-term in a full PPR format, I'm still going to be looking to sell Montgomery based off the limited usage that he has as a receiver. Still love Montgomery in a non-PPR league, but I do think Gibbs expands his role as the season progresses. They're 6-point favorites. They should be able to run the ball. Now, James Cook will be our next RB at 16. I mean, not even talking about the usage between him and Damien Harris. James Cook just looks straight up good on Monday night, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I was fine drafting James Cook because, I mean, hell, he was a year 2 running back in a great offense that would be able to effectively move the ball down the field, have trips to the red zone, have touchdown opportunities overall. But I was not expecting James Cook to look that good on a per-touch basis. I mean, there were times where he looked like he was the second, third best player in this Buffalo Bills offense. And I think as the season progresses, we probably see even more and more James Cook, less and less Damien Harris. And yeah, I think you can be excited. They're 10-point favorites against the Raiders. Now, Dameon Pierce will be our next RB. Dameon Pierce, I was surprised to see that Underdog has him for 70.5 total yards this next week. They did split the backfield 3 ways, essentially in week 1. Going up against the Indianapolis Colts, this should be one of the very few games where the Texans are competitive in. I believe the spread on this game is only going to be about 1 to 2 points in favor of Indianapolis. I'm hoping that you only have Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary saying work in this backfield this week. I mean, long-term, Dameon Pierce can be viable if it's a 2-man running back by committee. But if this turns into a 3-man running back by committee, I don't know how excited we can be. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs will be our next running back at 18. With Gibbs, like we were talking, long-term full PPR format, I'm pumped. Long-term full PPR format, give me all the Gibbs that I can get. This is a running back that is an elite receiving down back running behind an elite offensive line. The issue is, in the short term, it looks like it's David Montgomery's job. And in this matchup against Seattle, you probably don't have the Detroit Lions getting into a full-blown shootout where they really need Gibbs over Montgomery in the second half. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we will be going with Raheem Mostert against the New England Patriots. Patriots, pretty good defense overall, but still, at the end of the day, you do have the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins projected to be a high-scoring matchup where Miami is right now sitting with an implied team total of about 24.5 points, which is one of the highest-scoring offenses. I think we can assume that they are pass-happy, but not as pass-happy as they were a week ago. And yeah, Mostert's still the only guy seeing work here. Miles Sanders will be our next running back at 20. Sanders did see some targets. Sanders did get involved as a pass catcher. And if you're just looking at the box score, really doesn't seem to be anything concerning Miles Sanders and his overall usage going into this week. However, if you're diving a little bit under the hood and you're looking at the actual snaps, I'm a little bit concerned that Chuba played pretty much every single third down this past week. But ultimately, that's not necessarily something that's guaranteed to happen going forward. And I think we can be a little bit more balanced here with how we look at these RBs. Now, our next running back will be Jamal. With Jamal Williams, if Condre Miller were not to play, then I think you can move him up to the top of this tier. It is an interesting question, though, on if you are going to get Miller playing or not. Najee Harris will be our next running back. Pittsburgh's supposed to be a pretty bad offense against Cleveland right now. You have an implied team total of only 19 points. And with this, Najee Harris split the backfield with Jaylen Warren last week, ladies and gentlemen. His underdog pick'em right now is only at 61.5 total yards. Like we were saying previously, you have a running back like James Conner sitting 80 plus. So, I mean, if you drafted Najee right now, you are in a world of pain. And we did just see the Cleveland Browns defense completely shut out the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, our next running back will be Breece Hall. And I want to reiterate, and I will say this a million times because we've gotten a lot of heat for this. Breece Hall is one of the most talented running backs in the entire NFL. I said this when he was coming out of school. I said this in his rookie season. And I said this coming into this year. Breece Hall and his overall talent profile off the charts. And if he was in a better situation, say you put him on the Jacksonville Jaguars and you put Travis Etienne on the New York Jets with Zach Wilson and Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall in that circumstance would be a top 2-tier RB. He would be up there around running back 5, running back 6. But as we sit currently, Breece Hall projects to be in the worst offense in the NFL this week, going up against the Dallas Cowboys with an implied team total of only 16 points. And while Breece Hall, and anybody with eyes can see this, is the most talented running back by a mile for the New York Jets, ultimately, Dalvin Cook still saw more snaps, more carries, and more receptions this past week. So if we are going to try to be as objective as we possibly can with this, as it stands currently, Breece Hall is a committee running back in a bottom 5 offense in the NFL. I agree, he's an elite level talent, and I am rooting for this man. But with that being said, he is not a must-start player this week. He's a low-end RB2 with upside if he breaks away a long run. Now, our next running back will be Joshua Kelly. I want to reiterate, do not start Joshua Kelly if Austin Eckler is good to go. If Eckler were to miss, then at that point, I still think they split the backfield. I'm not saying Joshua Kelly is going to come out here and get every single touch, but it would be about this range, low-end RB2. If you really wanted to move him up to like RB19, I'd be completely fine with that as well. Brian Robinson will be our next back at 25. With Brian Robinson, love the usage that we got week 1. I mean, I think that you probably had Gibson kind of losing a considerable amount of work in the long term here. Now, the fundamental issue that we may have with Brian Robinson is kind of the same problem that we have with Breece Hall right now, where the offense just looks like it's going to be very bad. I mean, if we're going to go ahead and if we're going to look at what Vegas is telling us, they have the Washington Commanders as a bottom 3 offense in the NFL this week with an implied team total of about 17.5 points. Of course, that's going to be a lot better than what you possibly have, say, with Breece Hall, but still not a high-scoring offense, not a running back that's going to have a massive role as a pass catcher. Now, Tyler Algier will be our next running back at 26. You could have Tyler Algier higher than this if you wanted, but at the same time, I don't necessarily know if we are going to be in a spot where I want people to convince themselves Algier is a must-start running back every week. Obviously, you start him over Joshua Kelly. Obviously, you start him over A.J. Dillon if Aaron Jones and Austin Eckler were to go. I think he's a borderline top 24 running back with upside to be a top 10 running back weekly if something were to occur to Bijan Robinson. But what I'm a little bit worried about is in this matchup where you are going up against the Packers, what happens if you actually have the Atlanta Falcons trailing the majority of the game? And if they're trailing the majority of the game, at that point, are we in a situation where we're better off going through and, I don't know, I mean, seeing a little more passing volume and seeing the passing down back in Bijan Robinson get to work? Now, Dalvin Cook will be our next RB at 27. Horrendous offense, horrendous matchup. Yes, he did see the majority of the work in New York this past week. Generally, we tend to follow volume. But with that being said, I mean, Breece Hall is just the better running back. Breece Hall is going to be more efficient from a per-touch perspective. So even if Dalvin has more touches overall, I still want Hall. While at the same time, I think the coaching staff gives more and more work to Breece Hall and less work to Dalvin Cook as the season goes. Now, our last tier will be led off with Isaiah Pacheco at 28. Pacheco has it in his range of outcomes to continue to move up here. Now, what we are going to be looking for is we're going to be looking for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to potentially lead this offense, right? I mean, the issue that we have at this moment is this being a 3-man split backfield between Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Jerick McKinnon. If it was just McKinnon and Pacheco, I think you could view Pacheco as the top 24 guy. Now, Javonte Williams will be our next RB. The issue here is you are in a spot where this is one of the lowest scoring game environments of the week. Like we discussed, Washington only has an implied team total of about 17.5 points. I mean, the Denver Broncos right now are sitting at about 21 points for their overall implied team total. Pirine was more involved as a pass catcher in week 1. Pirine actually led the team in receiving. And they did split snaps literally 50-50. But what I'm going to assume is that Javonte Williams, as the season progresses, the younger, more talented back, will continue to play more and more snaps, see more and more looks, and Samaje Perine will fade out to the back end. Of course, as of now, we're forced to rank these guys back to back based off how the usage stands currently. But similar to the situation in New York, we can assume that it begins to flip as the season progresses with these running backs coming off torn ACLs. Now, our next running back will be Khalil Herbert. With Khalil Herbert, this is an offense where we can assume Justin Fields sees the majority of the rushing production, and it is a three-man split backfield, very similar to Isaiah Pacheco. I think Khalil Herbert could be an effective running back in fantasy and a top 24 guy if it was only between Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson. But once we get Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson, and Deonta Foreman here, it's much tougher to imagine that we have three viable RBs. Now, Justice Hill will be our next RB. With Justice Hill, if you look at a per touch perspective, this isn't really a running back that we can say, okay, yeah, he is dynamic. He is electric. He is extreme. No, he's not a super talented bag. He did score a couple touchdowns last week against Houston Texans. If I had to bet on him versus Gus Edwards, I would go Justice Hill, given the fact that Hill is going to be the guy with the receiving role. But I do think this is a split backfield. I think Lamar Jackson takes the majority of the work, and I don't love the matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. But I think that's all we have for you. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to check out any of those pick'ems in this video, if you want to get access to my top 150 rankings and tiers, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK, and they'll match that first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. Plus, you'll get all our rankings. You'll get a Joe Burrow special pick'em, more than less than half a passing yard against the Baltimore Ravens this Sunday. And on top of that, please include Tua in your special pick'em slip this weekend. That way you can get entered in. Underdog's going to be giving away $10,000 to 10 separate people that include the Tua special pick'em with his total yards. But I think that's all I have for you. Really do appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope that we get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.